Welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell.
Hey, it's Rose here. If you take a look around, you'll see our world is opening again. Cars fill the roadways, passengers fill the airports. For the first time since the pandemic began, 2 million people passed through TSA this weekend. Restaurants are bustling. Many in my home area of Cape Cod cannot find enough employees to meet the impending surge of the upcoming tourist season. Children and grown adults are playing team sports again. Spectators are filling arenas. Churches conduct services. Schools are back in session. Life is returning to a semblance of, quote, normal. And yet, 3.8 million humans are dead from the COVID-19 pandemic. Their loved ones' lives are forever altered. And those sickened by the pandemic, but lucky enough to survive, may have compromised physical and mental health for the rest of their lives. Businesses have shuttered. Livelihoods have been lost. And some of our brothers and sisters are jobless, or worse, homeless. So while some voice the fervent desire to return to our old ways, at heart, I believe most of us know there is no returning. There's no going back. We are forever changed. There is also the deepened and deepening divisiveness. Not just the political left versus the right, but the mask wearing, vaccine getting, who caused the pandemic, conspiracy generating thoughts. And I observe within my own tribe, ego and the need to be right manifesting and holding tighter to this illusion of control. I see those in the same team spar with one another over best solutions, forgetting that we are really on the same team. And what I know in my heart to be true is that this is an all hands on deck moment. Our differences don't matter. We are one. We have the same goals for peace, for love, for happiness. And so I find myself asking the question, how do we create the world our hearts know is possible? In recent weeks, I've been reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I can't recommend it to enough people. Sincerest apologies to those who've been listening to me ruminate about this book for the last few weeks, but each chapter has affected me on such a heart level that I have to take time to process and dig deeper into the indigenous wisdom Ms. Kimmerer so easily dispenses. Wisdom that, in my humble opinion, is so lacking in our day-to-day, quote, normal, end quote, existence. And I have to wonder how much richer our lives would be if we could incorporate the knowing of Native tradition, of indigenous customs, into our heart space and into our very being. If there's one thing I know to be true, it's that if there was a gift in the past year of lockdown, it was the time we were given to learn what we really valued, what we truly valued. Many of us discovered our connection and the very necessary comfort of the natural world. And I don't think this is an accident. There's actually a term for this, coined by the famous Harvard biologist Edward O. Wilson, called biophilia hypothesis. It's the idea that humans possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and all other forms of life. Dr. Wilson proposed in his 1984 work, Biophilia, that our natural affinity for life is the very essence of our humanity, and it binds us to all other living species, and that it comes in part from a genetic basis. I'll provide the link on the corresponding webpage for this podcast to his 1984 work. Interestingly, our very divergence from the natural world seems to have developed alongside new technology. Think of all those 19th and 20th century developments that have fundamentally changed our interactions with nature. Literally, we spend most of our hours now indoors, in our homes, in our workplaces, in our automobiles, sheltered from the elements of nature. Our kids interact with their screens more than they play outside. In the summer heat, we chase air conditioning, moving from one sterile environment to the next. How many names of flora and fauna do we actually know? For many, the natural world has faded into the background of our consciousness. But regardless of our numbness to it, science indicates that simply spending time in nature is beneficial for human health. For kids, being in nature encourages play and physical activity. And for us adults, spending time in nature helps our mental and spiritual health. Think about those walks you took in the woods this past year to clear your head of endless Zoom meetings. I know that I can personally attest to the boost I get from nature. I bet you can too. Scientists also believe that our increased dependence on technology has led to a diminished desire to connect with nature. Dr. Wilson and others have argued that reduction in biophilic behavior could remove meaning from nature, translating into a loss of human respect for the natural world. Can you see that happening? I can. That loss of desire to interact with the natural world, resulting in a decreased appreciation for the diversity of life forms that support human survival, has been cited as a potential factor contributing to environmental destruction and the rapid decrease of species extinction. I remain hopeful that our connection with nature in this past year will make us care more about the world beyond our human experience. And this is more in line with the Native American people's relationship with Mother Earth. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy, which is comprised of the Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, and Seneca peoples, have a decision-making process called the seventh generation principle. It's an ancient philosophy that requires that the decisions we make today should result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future. 7 generations. If you're wondering what constitutes a generation, it's the time from the birth of a child into adulthood when that child has the ability to have children of its own. Generally, it's 25 to 30 years. So 7 generations is somewhere between 175 to 210 years. How many decisions are we currently making that take into account what the earth will be like 175 to 210 years from now? How many decisions that we are currently making take into account what our progeny will be experiencing 2 centuries from now? Can we imagine a world where we operated with this goal at the heart of all of our transactions? versus the current cost-benefit analysis of a balance sheet? The seventh generation principle dates back to the writing of the Great Law of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, somewhere between 1150 to 1500 AD, although it's difficult to say exactly when. The Confederacy, again made up of the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, and the Senecas, was intended as a way to unite nations and create a peaceful means of decision-making. And the Great Law of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy is actually credited with influencing the creation of the American Constitution, because both Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, who crafted the American Constitution, had great respect for the Haudenosaunee system of government. I find it so interesting that the United States formed their Constitution not on the principles of European governments, but rather on that of a people we considered savages. Think about that for a minute. Through the Confederacy, each of the nations of the Haudenosaunee are united in a common goal to live in harmony, where its common core value is the seventh generation principle. And what makes it unique to other alliances around the world is its blending of law and values. For the Haudenosaunee, law, society, and nature are equal partners, and each plays an important role. Again, its common core value is the seventh generation principle. It sounds like something we could use about now, when the destruction of our natural habitat and species may be the most urgent issue of our time. Imagine if all our decision-making considered how present-day decisions would impact our descendants. What if we treated Mother Earth and all of her inhabitants, the rivers, the oceans, the streams, the insects, the bumblebees, the birds, the cheetahs, the elephants? What if we treated all of them like we were only borrowing them from future generations? The indigenous way, I believe, provides the roadmap forward. If you'd like to explore a bit more on your own, I'll leave some links to the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and a great video on today's Earth Feels episode 161 website page. And I'll close now with this quote from Dr. Wilson. Nature holds the key to our aesthetic, intellectual, cognitive, and even spiritual satisfaction. I couldn't agree more. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.
That's this week's episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you and for me.